call CHEK for part 2 of my little mini-series called What is Organic? To begin this section, I want to remind you, if you want more references for what I'm talking about, go to part 1. I shared 3 very good books. The references in those books will lead you to hundreds of other supportive books and affirmative for what I'm about to share. So what I'd like to do today first is orient you to my diagram so that once I start explaining things, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Obviously that represents the sun. The sun emits photons of light, which you know of. The little lines across there stand for paramagnetic. In his book, Paramagnetism, Phil Callahan shows that during high solar flare activities or certain periods in the sun, the sun emits photons that are called monopoles, which are paramagnetic, which means paramagnetic means something that has an affinity to the south pole of a magnet. Diamagnetic means something that has an affinity to the north pole of a magnet. There's more complex explanations in Phil Callahan's book if you want to get down into the nitty-gritty, but for now that's the key thing to understand. So the ones with no red lines, they mean the standard typical photon. The ones with the red lines means it's a monopole called a paramagnetic energy source. Moonlight, in the light purple here, moonlight in general is paramagnetic. So the sunlight that's typically its normal polarity, when it hits the moon, flips over and becomes paramagnetic. So the moonlight is a strong source of paramagnetic energy, which will be more important as we go along. Water represents a diamagnetic type of material. All bodies, your physical body, water, and in general, soil, unless it has rocks that have a high paramagnetic energy in them. So certain rocks like basalt, for example. And interestingly enough, Callahan showed all the rocks that they used, predominantly the rocks used to build pyramids, the Irish round towers, and almost all the major healing sites in the world were hand-selected due to high paramagnetic energy, and he showed by doing scientific measurements that these people had to have known what they were doing, because in a geological survey he showed that they must have walked at least 50 miles in some instances to collect the rocks to build these structures to have the electromagnetic properties I'm going to share with you now. So paramagnetic, affinity to the south pole. Everything else, water, typical soil, your body is diamagnetic, north pole, so there you have a polarity. When you have a polarity like that, you have work potential. It's because of polarity that a magnet can lift something or that an electric motor does work. Okay, now, oxygen turns out to be the most highly paramagnetic substance ever measured at a rating of over 4,000. If you look at his book, you'll see the rating scales. So oxygen, high solar flare or high burst energy sunlight can have paramagnetic monopoles, and moonlight is highly paramagnetic. And certain stones, which there's a list of in various books, have high paramagnetic energy. So that's the building blocks. Now we look here, these represent pieces of earth called humus, which has got a crumb-like structure, and the humus is built by microorganisms in the soil taking dead organic matter, such as, plants that have died, dead grasses, any dead organic matter, and they weave it into, they create these crumb-like structures out of it. They actually build these things, and these crumb-like structures are very unique because the soil microorganisms construct these things in a way that they actually act as antennas, and this little crumb-like structure of the soil, this is a typical piece of dirt, a granule of dirt off of an organic farm, has been shown by research in Russia and potentially other places as well, that they act just like antennas. So there's my little satellite dish antenna. Now when the soil is farmed properly and the microorganisms are healthy, they reconstruct the soil into this crumb-like structure called humus, and that acts acts not only to hold water. 1 cubic foot of humus can hold 7 gallons of water. So when the soil's got a healthy microorganism population, it regulates the flow of water, it regulates the temperature in the soil, because the little microorganisms give off heat. They're alive, so they can keep the soil warm in the winter and cooler in the summer, interestingly enough, because one of the things they do is aerate. They make it so that air can get down into the soil, which is critical because oxygen's highly paramagnetic and water's diamagnetic. So if no soil gets down in there and you don't have the right mineral composition, you have something that has no energy in it, as I'll show you. So now, if the farmer has the right balance of minerals in the soil, which is what organic and biodynamic farming is all about, then they will have an adequate amount of paramagnetic mineral with diamagnetic mineral, and the microorganisms can couple these things together, and this produces work potential. Now, in order to make this all go, we need the magic connector, water. Water creates connection to allow the flow of energy and information. Without water in your body, you're dead, because there's no connection between cells, chemical functions, there's no flow of energy and information. So the microorganisms are very, very water conscious. They hold on to water and they put water where it needs to be in order to make that soil functional. And isn't it interesting that plants won't grow in dry soil? You got to water plants. Why? Because you have to turn on the circuit, the electrical circuit. If the sun's there or the moon's there, but there's no water, these two polarities cannot interact with each other. So what I've said so far is that the microorganisms, such as earthworms and other creatures, well, insects and microorganisms, all the creatures of the soil, work to aerate the soil, they work to control the flow of water, they work to control the temperature of the soil, and they take the earth that normally is not designed for effective reception of cosmic energies and often doesn't have the right mineral balance, and between the weeds, which remineralize the soil, surprise, 2 classes of weeds, broadleaf and narrowleaf, and each of them puts different minerals back into the soil, and whatever weed grows means that's the minerals that you're missing. So you shouldn't kill weeds with pesticides, because as the great farmers say, that's your farming report card. So now that we've got kind of an overview, water, soil, diamagnetic, paramagnetic, water in between, soil microorganisms, they're catching the rays of sunlight and moonlight, and they're taking that energy and putting it into an electromagnetic motor type relationship where you have positive affinity, negative affinity connected by water, which produces electrical energy. Yahoo! The soil is alive, it's electric. Now, let's take a look at this. Come right over here. You see I've drawn the magnetic lines around the Earth. The magnetic lines go parallel to the surface of the Earth. They go around the Earth. You're walking around in them. They're coming through you. So the magnetic line goes this way. This stands for the Earth, and that stands for magnetism. The electrical field goes at 90 degrees to the magnetic field. And this is why things grow up. They're actually growing up along the electrical field, which goes perpendicular to the magnetic field. So you would have current, like so. And that would represent your negative charge, your positive charge, alternating current, if you will. It's not really alternating current, but it alternates, it fluctuates in its energy. So what happens is the magnetic field produces electrical energy through its relationship with di and paramagnetic substances, which are connected by water, which are energized by the sun, the moon, and cosmic radiation from every star whose energy reaches our planet. The magnetic field then carries the electric field. So think of a lattice that runner plants run on, just like vines grow up trees. The magnetic field acts like a lattice, and the electrical field gives it the power. So the more electrical energy there is in the soil, the greater the potential for growth. Now, that said, you can also put too much electricity in the soil by using various tricks, and do what Arden Anderson calls burning the soil out, such as putting sugar in the soil, which some farmers do, will speed plant growth up, but it can also burn it out. So just like you can only handle so much electricity in your body, everything has an optimal rate. But if the ratio of diamagnetic and paramagnetic is right and the microorganisms do their job, we have an amazing, giant, living bio-battery that fuels the earth and the plants and the animals with energy that we bring into our bodies. We breathe oxygen into our bodies, we eat the food, and we get a nice experience called, hey, here I am, I'm alive. Okay, so now that you understand that plants need an electrical source of energy, which draws them, the sun pulls them up, everything's growing toward the sun, and the magnetic field's there, and we understand that we have to have water, we have to have soil microorganisms, we need paramagnetic minerals in the soil, and an organic farmer's job is to balance those minerals so you get the right electrical capacitance, conductance, generation, all these neat things that make things go, and those things create those special little antennas which catch all the energy and suck it into the soil, and that creates the charge that makes everything grow. Now, isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? So think about a couple things. If you put chemical fertilizers, you kill microorganisms. If you put, they're all salts. NPK, most fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, are salts. What happens if you put salt on an earthworm? You kill it. It dehydrates it immediately. Earthworms are the unpaid labor force of a farm. They're the chief aerators of the soil. Their poop is called castings. It's highly nutritious and rich for the plant roots to absorb and eat. So we spray this stuff on the ground trying to make the plants grow better, but we're killing the prime aerators of the soil who bore down several feet so that oxygen that's highly paramagnetic can get down there and they can build crumb-like structures and make the topsoil deeper and more effective. So if we pour chemicals on the ground, we kill the little microorganisms, so now we have no antenna builders. What's it like trying to watch TV without an antenna? You're just staring at fuzz. Well, what's it like trying to live without an antenna? Well, you get sick, you get fat, you get tired, and you go to doctors, and the same geniuses that tell you to poison the ground are making drugs for you at the doctor's office. That's smart, that's so good. Which is all fine, everybody's got their game, right? I'm not against doctors or chemists, I'm just all for knowledge. If you don't buy it, they can't make it. Okay, so we have learned that the soil is alive in its natural state. An organic farmer is someone who has a knowledge of how the soil works and does not use chemicals on the soil that damage the unpaid labor force, the microorganisms, the earthworms, and the insects, because they do all this magic work for us. Remember that next time you squash a bug. If you kill the microorganisms, you don't have an antenna system, you poison the soil, you poison the water, you poison the food, and here's the scary part. You eat it. They poison the water and they poison the food, and you eat it thinking you're getting a discount because it's cheaper. All right? So, what we have learned is that organic farming is essential not only for your health, but for the entire health of the planet, because these little creatures also support the animals and the birds and every living thing on this planet. They are amazing, and we should love and respect and care for the earth and only put our money into farmers that are supporting the planet and our health, and that is the best thing you can do to vote. Support your local farmer, support your soil, and in so doing you're supporting the planet and yourself, and the sooner we get going, the sooner our kids are likely to get healthy, and the world is likely to get healthy, and healthy people think healthy thoughts. That's my goal. See you soon.